4 realistic horror stories you'll think about at 3 a.m. Camping stalker, snow cabin, precinct trap, haunted rocking chair. Welcome back to Midnight Movie Recaps. Tonight, 4 true-feeling horror stories. No jump scares, just slow dread. If you're listening in the dark, don't look at the windows. Let's begin. Headphones on, lights low. Tonight isn't monsters, it's people, places, and moments you could walk into tomorrow. 4 grounded horror stories. A campsite stalker who whistles in the dark. A snow cabin with something waiting to be invited in. A safe police lot meetup that shifts to a trap. And a rocking chair that won't stop keeping time. These are the ones that feel real because they are. Breathe slow. And whatever you do, don't open the door. Concept 4. Grounded, slow-burn horror stories told like confessions. No supernatural crutches, just human shadows, bad decisions, and the tiny sounds that turn safe places into traps. Short, attractive, realistic, creepy teaser. Some horror feels fake. This doesn't. A whistler circles a campsite and stacks stones while you sleep. A pale shape perches in a pine and taps glass for an invitation. A safe police station meetup slides into a roadside trap. And a basement rocking chair moves like it's keeping someone's breath. These aren't jump scares. They're the choices you make at midnight. The ones that decide whether you tell the story or someone else does. The Whistler in Gorin State Forest. I was 22 the summer we picked Gorin State Forest, a lesser-known stretch of Colorado pines people skip for the postcard parks. Eli, my cousin, is the type who can coil a bear hang like a magician and make fire with a single grimace. Eagle Scout, 6-inch scar on his thumb from a sappy childhood whittling accident, proud owner of a backpack that rattles like a toolbox. Me? I'm the helpful but mostly in the way guy who always underestimates how cold the night gets at elevation. It was a Tuesday when we went in. We love weekdays. Trails are empty then. No RV generators punching holes in the dark. No drunk midnight karaoke bleeding across the tree line. We parked by a cracked picnic slab that probably predates both of us, locked the car, and shouldered our packs. The air had that pine and dust smell I wish was a candle that didn't smell like chemicals trying to be outdoors. 15 minutes in, the lot disappeared behind a curtain of trunks, and the forest did that thing it does where it seems to both press in and open up at the same time. Lodgepoles rising like columns, blue sky diced into shards, our boots hissed in the needle duff. Eli pointed with his chin at a shallow oval of ground between 4 trees. There, he said, enough flat for 2 tents in my culinary theater. He wasn't kidding. Eli camps like a grandma hosts brunch. He had a battered pan wrapped in a towel, a spice tin, a little silicone basting brush. He gets a twinkle when he says the word reduction, which I think he uses wrong on purpose to irritate me. We did the ritual. Spot check. Dead limbs overhead, none. Ground pick. Cones out, roots avoided, tent sites staked. He popped his tent in 4 minutes like it had been pre-assembled by elves. I wrestled with mine and swore at a stubborn shock cord like it wronged my ancestors. We ringed a fire pit with stones that had obviously been used before, the soot telling little black biographies on their faces. Yes, we cheated. Fire starter. Judge me all you like. Punky wood makes a fool out of men. When steaks hit the pan, the smell got into my bones. We ate like idiots. Ribeye with crust and salt crystals you could see. Foil-wrapped potatoes burned just enough to be perfect. The kind of cheap beer that tastes like a promise when you earned your hunger by moving your legs all day. Eli tossed me the speaker. Classic rock. I picked something with guitars that sounded like highway heat, and we leaned back in camp chairs that creaked in complaint, laughing about a spring break years ago when we drank fluorescent coconut liquor on a beach and learned our bodies don't run on sugar and bravado. Somewhere around dusk, when the sky became a coin pressed thin at the treetops, we switched to cards. We played rummy until rummy got boring. Then we played Uno because we're cowards who prefer violence in primary colors. The fire had settled into the kind of orange that makes you feel like you live inside a throat. That's when I heard it. 3 notes, airy and thin. Not birds, not wind. A human whistle coming from somewhere beyond the firelight, behind Eli's left shoulder. Not close, but not far enough to ignore. I looked up. He was still arranging his cards. I didn't trust my ears enough to say anything. Seconds later it came again. The exact same 3 notes at the exact same spacing, but now to our right. Eli paused mid-draw. We both listened. The forest does a weird thing when you're listening for something. Even the quiet has texture. We watched the black between tree trunks like it might watch back. "Flashlight," he said softly. I fumbled in the mess bag. By the time I got a beam, the sound had slipped away like a dog off leash. There, then elsewhere, then gone. Eli didn't panic, didn't do a movie whisper. He just let out air slow, like a patient man looking at a stubborn knot. "Unusual," he said. "Middle of the week, this deep." "What was it?" "People," he said, "which is worse than bear most days." We turned the music down to where it was something our ears needed to find. We tried to pretend we were fine. But once you hear a human sound that doesn't belong in wilderness, every innocent forest noise sounds like it's clearing its throat to say your name. I tried to draw a red 5. I dropped it. 10 minutes later, a stick, think forearm size, arced out of the dark and slapped the dust between our chairs. The impact made a tight little puff of ash float up from the fire's rim. It hadn't fallen. It had an angle, a speed, a decision behind it. Eli exploded to his feet and barked at the trees in a voice I'd only heard when my uncle's truck died on a hill. "Not funny, get lost." That was when we heard the footsteps. Not scrambling, not running, just the patient pad of boots leaving. Human weight translates to ground like a specific language, and animals don't speak it right. My brain wanted highways and street lamps. My mouth said it. We should pack up and move. "Where?" Eli asked. "Blind in the dark? You want to sleep in a wash or on a slope? That's how ankles break and grown men cry." "Then what?" "We do what we planned," he said. "Fire low, spray at hand. You sleep, I read, we swap." "Bear spray on humans? Better than nothing," he said. "Range is range." Then he added quieter. "Don't leave the tent if you hear something. Don't talk to anything that talks back unless it's me." We banked the fire to coals with a long stick like a witch's spoon. Poured a thin ring of water around it, watched the hiss, watched the steam. He sat with his headlamp and a paperback, back to the fire pit, face to the dark. I crawled into my tent, zipped it, and lay down on nylon that crackled with static like it could shock fear out of me. Sleep in the woods is different. It comes in thin layers like blankets you pull up one by one. First you hear everything. Then you hear everything distant. Then you hear what your body insists you hear. Breath, heartbeat, the sly giggle of a cold breeze finding the gap in your bag's zipper. I woke because something pushed me up from under the layers. A sound, a change in air pressure. I didn't know. I knew only that my heart was ahead of me, moving faster than my brain. My eyes opened. For a second, I saw nothing. Then the tent fabric by the door went darker in an oval, like a silhouette leaned close enough to claim the light that wasn't even there. Ahead. Someone peering in. "Eli," I whispered, or tried to whisper, because it came out like a voice I'd used not to startle a deer. "Is it my turn?" The zipper ticked, a short little sound, and the dark oval vanished. Footsteps angled away, careful on needles. I sat up so fast the bag spun around me like a snake. I yanked the zipper. The clearing presented itself like a crime scene waiting on actors. The dying ember heart of the fire, the folding table with the cards frozen mid-game, 2 chairs with our shapes worn in. Eli's seat was empty. I wobbled to his tent. The zipper gave, and inside he was on his back, mouth a little open, headlamp pressed sideways against his cheek, paperback splayed across his chest like a bird. I said his name too loud. He woke with a thrash like he'd been thrown from a truck. He was out of the bag in one motion, spray in hand, eyes glass bright. "What?" Someone was just at my tent. We did the fearful choreography you do when you're trying not to run. He posted at his door. I sprint walked to mine, knee-banged a stake, grabbed my bag and pad with the gracelessness of a thief in a cartoon who keeps dropping silver candlesticks. Somewhere between almost done and done, the whistle came again, 3 little notes, muffled, closer. "Hurry," Eli said, and for the first time all night there was no porch light calm in his voice. We sealed into his tent. 2 grown men in a 2-man shelter is like sharing a spoon, intimate and stupid. Our shoulders touched. Our sprays sat on our thighs. His headlamp was off, and we became that kind of blind where your eyes invent stars. Somewhere out there, someone tested the distance of our fear with breath. Hours dragged like wet rope. The forest adjusts its volume down in the last part of night, like it senses dawn coming and resents it. My turn came. I took it, sitting cross-legged, listening so hard I could hear where my hair hit the tent wall when I tilted my head. Eli slept in fitful 5-minute bites and snorted awake with a mumbled apology each time. When I couldn't stand sitting, I counted breaths. I made rules with myself like a kid. If I get to 500 and nothing taps the tent, we live. Light arrived not as a color, but as the idea that color exists. The tent fabric shifted from black to dark blue to bruised gray. We unzipped to a clearing washed in milk, and the furniture had been moved. Along the edge of the site, just outside boot range, stood 3 little stacks of stones, each stack 5 or 6 rocks tall, balanced with small care, like a child building towers for the fun of knocking them down. This forest has rocks, but we hadn't gathered those, and we hadn't placed them in a row like little chess pawns facing our tent doors. I looked at Eli. His face did a thing I've seen twice. Once when he nearly drowned body surfing as a kid. Once when he watched a detective take bags of our grandmother's things out the back door after a break-in. Not fear, recognition of a rule broken by someone else. He crouched and touched one tower with one finger on top, so delicate it could have been love. Dew kissed his knuckle. Fresh, he said. We packed quickly. Speed is ritual. Roll, stuff, cinch, coil. You compress everything you own until it forgets its shape. You make your body into movement so your mind can be rock. When we were down to stragglers, spork, headband, coffee bag, I asked about his GoPro. He uses an old one on day hikes to make tiny long videos only we watch with beers later. He'd set it last night on the folding table, pointed at the fire, on a little suction cup mount that sticks to anything, including the windshield. The suction cup was there, a lonely black pad. The camera was not. We're leaving, he said. Not like a decision, just like narration. He didn't say the other words in his eyes. And whoever took it stood where you sleep. We ate nothing. We said nothing until the car. We became people of machines, not trees. Doors slamming, seatbelt clicks, human smells, coffee in a travel mug we didn't touch. We followed the washboard road to pavement like it was a string leading out of a maze. It wasn't over. At a gas station by the highway, the kind with a bathroom you need a key to access and a rack of sunglasses that make everyone look like a cop, Eli said he needed the restroom. He took the spray. I sat and stared at nothing the way people do when they've decided that thinking is dangerous. Then a sound reached through the windshield and touched the back of my neck. 3 notes. Soft, almost embarrassed. I turned. Across the lot, near the dumpsters, a man in a brown hoodie stood with his hands in his pockets like he was waiting for a ride. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, through the windshield, through the reflection of my own dumb face, at the suction cup base still stuck to the glass where a camera had been last night. He lifted his chin once, not a nod, not hello. Something like I see you seeing me. I opened the car door. I told myself I was getting a better look for a license plate or a face. Really, I needed my legs to prove they still belonged to me. I walked toward the dumpsters. The man stepped behind them. I reached the corner and saw cardboard, a leaking bag, a smear of something unimportant. No man, no running feet, no car pulling out in a hurry. The air had the wet paper smell of a magazine left in the rain. Back in the car, Eli's hands shook so hard the paper towels he'd grabbed from the bathroom did that rattle sound birds make when they shake water off. I told him what I'd not seen. He nodded like a person who understands there are things we don't tell to prevent the other person from breaking. He drove. I stared out the window and invented rational versions of events for a world that needs such things to function. 2 days later, an email with no subject landed in his inbox. The address was a shape of letters and numbers that didn't spell a person. There was no text, just a link to a file. We watched it on my laptop with the brightness up and the sound down. Night vision makes the world a lie. Our campsite glowed like it remembered sunlight. The trees were washed white like bones left out. The video shook with handheld life. No tripod, just a person who'd decided to own the night. It showed the back of my tent. The thin nylon was a soft breathing lung. It showed Eli by the fire, head down over his book, eyelids drooping in slow folds until sleep took his chin. It showed a hand sew itself out of the dark at the bottom of the frame and rest on the table we'd been playing cards on. The fingers were long. The nails were too clean. The knuckles had those little white scars some people get from working with tools. The hand hovered over the orange stove bag like it was petting something alive. It picked up a small stone from somewhere and set it on the ground with the kind of care nurses use with foreheads. Then another, then another. The camera never panned to show the stack, but the hands returned empty, then full, then empty again, each time leaving something in the edge of the frame that was not there before. At the very end, the hand reached into the frame, touched the camera's side, and the picture jolted as it got lifted. We saw the ground spin. We saw our chairs go upside down in the lens like bats. We saw the black scoop of a hood, then nothing. We took the laptop to a ranger station because that's what you do when you don't know what else to do. The ranger had a face like bark and the patience of a person who has heard every story twice. He watched. He nodded. He asked if we wanted to file a report. We did. He said words about stepping up patrols and the limits of ranges and cameras. He used the phrase acts of intimidation, and the phrase made something inside me sit down and go quiet. We didn't camp again that year. I still hike. I still love pine and the hush that lives between trunks. But the forest is changed for me, the way a street is different after a car runs a stop sign and kisses your bumper. When I hear a whistle now, in a stadium, from a janitor in a hall, from a kid whose teeth make the sound a gift, I don't look in the direction of the noise. I scan the space where the noise would have wanted me to look and check if anything is moving the furniture there. I keep bear spray under my driver's seat. I keep a suction cup mount in the glove box, just in case I ever decide I want to film myself being the kind of person who leaves when invited to stay. Eli sends me trail photos sometimes, flowers that look like little flags, a track he can't place. He signs them as a joke with 3 notes written like music. Humans are worse than bears. A bear you can step away from. A person will step closer and whistle like it's a handshake and then build a tiny tower in your home to show you that your world rearranges while you sleep. The white-limbed watcher. I didn't drive up to the mountain cabin to prove anything. I went because grief needed walls that didn't ask me questions. My dad died in May. By December, I was still talking to him at red lights. The cabin, halfway up Mount Calder, always smelled like old pine and old smoke. A scent that makes your chest loosen even when you don't want it to. It was me and Nova, my dog, half shepherd, half lab, all believer that my knees exist as pillows. We climbed the last narrow mile, wipers knocking through a light burst of snow, and the green cabin sagged into view. Leaned balcony, soft roofline, a place that looks tired until you open the door and the wood seems to remember you. I did the rituals my dad always did. Heat from off to please, taps cracked to see if the pipes would cough water, curtains open so the trees could stare in. He used to say the forest gets suspicious if you shut it out. Nova did his big house loop nose to floor, pawing the rug once like he was claiming it. By dusk I'd stacked wood, salted the step, and made spaghetti I ate from the pot, not because I had no plates, but because plates are for people with plans. Snow arrived like someone sneaking scarves out of a sleeve. At 10, I stepped onto the balcony with Nova to watch it. Forest nights swallow shape. The trees turn to a vertical barcode of dark, and the sky is just a suggestion of gray. Nova's ears popped forward, hard. He stared at the roofline. Then I felt, more than heard, 6 measured thuds above me, spaced like long human strides crossing a stage. I fed myself the small lies we feed ourselves at 10:12 p.m. Thermal expansion, falling ice, raccoon. Easy, I told Nova. He didn't growl. He didn't move. He simply stared at the roof until whatever it was passed, if it passed. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped out anyway because that's the kind of bad decision you make when you don't want to be afraid in your own house. The roof was a pure white quilt. No scuffs, no prints. The beam swept across shingles, across the yard, across the black line of trees. When you turn a light off in the forest, things rearrange. The snow kept a ghostly brightness, the trunks became stripes, and in that pattern my eyes found something wrong. In a taller pine 20 feet out, a shape crouched where people don't crouch. Feet planted flat on a branch. Knees open as if it were squatting on a floor. Arms too long, reaching higher to hook fingers over a limb like it was a chin-up bar. The skin looked pale even in that light. The mouth was open in a way that wasn't a face so much as a mistake, an oval held there like someone forgot to close it. I didn't hit it with the beam. I looked a hair to its left, the way you pretend you aren't watching someone who might watch back. Nova stood on his toes at my side, made no sound, breathed through his nose like he was memorizing a scent. I stepped backward into the room, locked the slider like a child, and yanked the curtain closed. At 1 a.m, the tapping began. Not knocking, not branch scrape. Tap, 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 a fingertip on glass, then silence, then the same measured taps. Nova sat pressed against me on the bed, staring at the door with a look I've never seen on a living thing, half warning, half plea. The idea arrived not as words, but as a pressure in my chest. This isn't a request, it's an invitation. It wanted me to open the door, to step out. I remembered my dad's voice from years ago, a line he used when I asked him whether ghosts were real. Don't be scared of ghosts. Be scared of invitations. I didn't move. The tapping went on long enough to become part of the room. Then it stopped mid-pattern, and the quiet was worse. At some point, a rope in me slackened and sleep dropped over everything like snow. Gray morning gives everything edges back. Outside, the balcony showed no prints, but in the yard, a path of holes ran straight from the trees to the road. Deep, clean circles, each the same size, spaced farther apart than a normal walk, like someone tiptoed on the points of their feet with perfect balance. No heel, no toe, no splay. I didn't follow them. Nova sniffed too, sneezed, and backed away, tail tucked. Packing looked like a time-lapse of nerves. I threw shirts into a bag, forgot the charger, remembered it, forgot the toothbrush, and told myself I'd buy one in town. On the drive down, an orange snowplow flashed past in the other lane like a moving lighthouse. Only when my phone found towers again did my shoulders drop. That night at home, the radiator ticked 6 times, paused, ticked 6 again. Not roof steps, not anything, but my neck prickled anyway. I turned the valve until it hissed and went quiet. Sleep was shallow. I lasted 2 weeks before I went back. I told my mother I needed to check for burst pipes. I didn't say I was checking for something with long arms. The balcony curtain hung a little crooked, as if fingers had pinched the edge. On the outside of the glass, 5 faint ovals were visible only when the sun slid across at the right angle. Smudges where fingertips would be if someone had tapped with care. I wiped them with my sleeve like I could erase the idea. That second night at 3 a.m., a sound woke me that I will always doubt and always believe. A breath on the other side of the door. Not animal panting, not wind. A steady in, out, as if a chest stood a foot from the glass. Nova didn't growl. He stared at the slider and chose with every muscle not to hear it. I lay with my hand on his neck and counted breaths that weren't mine until numbers stopped meaning anything. At dawn, a shallow groove ran 10 feet from the balcony parallel to the house and then veered into the trees, 2 inches wide like something heavy had been dragged. I scuffed it smooth with my boot and told myself a branch had made it. I stepped out into the trees without Nova because a foolish part of me wanted the forest to be ordinary again. At the base of the pine where I'd seen the shape, the snow showed a melted depression among scattered needles, a place where weight had been. I crouched and held my palm over it. Cold rose into my hand like a warning. Behind me, the wood creaked. I spun. No one. Only the unique hiss of wind in frozen branches and the drum in my chest, too loud to hear anything else. I lasted 1 more night, then winterized the place and drove down. Back home, I asked a wildlife forum in delicate words what leaves deep, single, widely spaced holes in snow. Replies were photos of fox patterns and weasel bounds, a rabbit's loping line. None looked right. One person joked, "A guy on stilts." I stared at that for too long. March thawed the mountain into gray. The balcony glass had a new hairline crack in the lower corner. A tiny star, like something hard, had tapped it once with precision. 3 pine needles lay arranged in a neat triangle on the floor inside, pointing at the door. I laughed at myself, then swept them with a dustpan anyway, like I could sweep an idea. My dad kept a small green notebook for fish lengths and chimney reminders. I hadn't opened it since May. In March, I flipped it to a random page and found in his blocky caps, "Don't be afraid of ghosts. Be afraid of invitations." Maybe he meant salesmen, or grief, or the way trouble always asks permission first. There's no ending you can test with a meter. I never caught anything on camera. The ranger would have smiled kindly and written down possible trespass on a clipboard that makes all fear look small. What I have is this. Sometimes after midnight, tapping returns. Once in January, once in March, once in air so still, the trees seem to be listening. I keep my hand on Nova's neck and let the rhythm speak without answering. If he doesn't stand, I don't. If he doesn't look, I don't. If something out there wants me to move first, it can learn to knock like a person. Even then, the door stays shut. The rest is discipline. Curtains open so the forest keeps its eye on us. Less bourbon, more batteries. A rule I keep like a prayer. You don't accept invitations from the dark. You let them tap themselves tired. You sleep with the world staring in. And if you wake to 6 soft thuds crawling across your roof like steps only a body too tall could take, you lie still and breathe with your dog and think about men on stilts, and about mouths held open like doors, and about how the only thing you can control is whether you open yours. Meet me at the precinct. I told myself I was being patient, not cheap. My phone was limping along, battery that flatlined at 40%, camera fogged from a rainstorm, cracks like a spider web. I stalked Marketplace, Craigslist, OfferUp, skipping anything that smelled like stock photos or typos. Then I saw it. Brand new phone, unlocked, 128 GB by $350. Photos of a shrink-wrapped box, a sticker with the IMEI. The seller, Cal, typed like a human and suggested we meet in front of the police precinct lobby, cameras everywhere. It felt responsible. It felt safe. I asked for a quick video. He sent one. His voice flat and pleasant, the seal intact, the IMEI matching the database. When I pointed out his profile said he was in my town, he said he'd been here earlier but was helping a friend up north now. "We can meet at the station by him," he wrote. "Nicer lot, better lights." I bribed my friend Tessa to come for fries. She's the kind of person who carries 2 hair ties, a tiny flashlight, and pepper spray like a well-prepared raccoon. We left at 8:30 on a Friday night. Streetlights thinned, houses spread out. By 9:42, we rolled into a bricked precinct lot. Silent cruisers, glass doors, the kind of emptiness that looks safe at noon and abandoned at 10. "No, Cal. I texted here," he replied. "Car trouble on the road next to you. Hazards on. Can you give me a jump? Then we can do the deal there." He dropped a pin, a dark stretch with trees on both sides and no shoulder. Tessa said no before I could. I told him we'd only meet in front of the lobby. He insisted it would take 2 minutes. We compromised with stupidity. We'd drive past and keep going if it felt wrong. It felt wrong immediately. A black car sat nose to us in the lane, hazards fluttering like a dying moth. Hood down, windows dark. No silhouette, no movement. We didn't stop. My phone buzzed as we passed. "Saw you. Why didn't you stop?" We drove to a diner, the kind with chrome trim and coffee that smells like it started at dawn. A man in a navy hoodie ordered a to-go cup and said, "Thank you, darling," to the waitress in a tone that made my molars ache, the same rhythm as the seller's video voice. Or maybe just the rhythm I'd given it in my head. We asked for the check and tried to be polite about fleeing. When we stood, the man stood too and held the door for us without looking. He turned left. Our car was right. He didn't follow. I still drove like the lot was shrinking. 10 minutes later, on the highway, the low tire pressure light winked on. We hadn't hit anything. The car leaned a little right. I pulled onto the shoulder and fought lug nuts that didn't want to say yes. Cars tore past, wind pulses, headlight screams. A woman in a pickup parked behind us with hazards on and offered a reflective triangle. "I'll wait," she said, and did. Even with her there, the spare felt like putting hope where safety used to be. At a gas station, under 2 bright lights, I looked at the flat. A clean, straight slice in the sidewall. Not a nail, not luck. It looked like a box cutter had kissed it right where it guarantees a slow failure. I didn't show Tessa. She saw my face and knew. We parked at a 24-hour grocery store entrance beneath cameras. Tessa called the non-emergency line. The officer on the phone said, "This happens. You did the right thing not stopping in a dark area. If they keep contacting you, file a report. If you find a tracker, bring it in." We searched the car by flashlight. Nothing. Back home, my phone flashed a notification for an app I didn't remember installing. Permissions granted today. I deleted it. In the morning, I slid my hand under the passenger seat and felt a coin-sized disc taped to the carpet. Smooth, anonymous. We took it to our local station. The desk officer dropped it into a paper envelope with a practiced sigh, wrote a case number, and told us we'd probably never hear more. He praised our instincts up until we drove to a second location. Shame doesn't need help. I supplied my own. 2 nights later, someone knocked on my apartment door at 9:15. 3 slow knocks. Unknown number texted, "You forgot your phone." Then, "Just kidding." We called the police again. A patrol car rolled by 20 minutes later. The officer suggested door cameras and meeting cellars inside precinct lobbies. "If they won't come inside, don't buy," she said. I wanted to argue that we had tried. I didn't. Another text came the next day from a new number, a 5-second video. My car in the grocery lot at night, the camera panning from the rear tire to my plate to the store entrance where Tessa and I were reflections in a sliding door. "Nice donut," the text said. I blocked it and forwarded the video to the case email. Silence in return. That's the problem with human predators. The evidence they leave is a feeling. Time did what it does to edges. I replaced the tire. On a bright Saturday, I met a different seller inside a precinct lobby with a vestibule sign that literally read, "Online Safe Exchange Zone." Suburban parents passed holding toddlers' hands. A clerk stamped papers behind glass. The woman selling the phone had 2 kids squabbling over a cheap stuffed shark. She opened the box. The phone turned on. I counted cash with the door cracked and Tessa on speaker asking me, loudly, to read out street names so she knew where to meet me for lunch, which was code for, "I am listening and could describe your face." I would love to end there, but stories leave tales. A month later, I drove past the original station on my way to pick up a co-worker. A black sedan eased from a side street and merged ahead of me, hazards blinking once as if by accident. It kept going. Maybe it meant nothing. My heart clung to a rib and didn't follow for a few beats anyway. I change small things in big ways. Meet at noon, not at 10 at night. Only in lobbies, never around the side. Photograph serials there, not later. Never step to, just over here for better light, a quicker jump, a faster count. Don't go to a second location became a rule for transactions, for texts, for any conversation where a stranger says, "Trust me." Predators perform courtesy like it's a key, holding doors, offering help, suggesting safer options that all require you to accept something small. The danger isn't that you say yes to something huge, it's that you say yes to something reasonable. There were moments the shame tried to rewrite the narrative. You overreacted. It could have been a coincidence. Then I remember the sidewall cut. Neat, deliberate. The coin-sized tracker under the seat. The "saw you" text the instant we passed the staged black car. The man in the diner who rose when we did, who held the door, who didn't need to follow because the path he'd made for us didn't require him to. The only reason this ends as a story I tell and not one told about me is Tessa's firm no, and a stranger in a pickup who parked behind us with hazards on, making her truck loud enough to push back the river for 15 minutes. People say be careful like it's a charm. Better is be inconvenient. Refuse the detour, the tweak, the tiny favor. Be the person who wastes someone's time rather than the person whose time gets stolen. Tessa still charges me interest on the fries I promised. We got them eventually in a place with too much neon and teens throwing napkins across a booth. I told her I was going to reclaim my pride by listing something dumb on Marketplace. She said, "List your spare cents." I said, "Price firm." We laughed the laugh people laugh when their bodies need to let pressure out. When the bill came, we both glanced at the door. The way you glance at a stove, you know you turned off. That glance is a habit now. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels like consent to stay here and tell the story, instead of letting someone else write an ending for me on a dark road with no shoulder, trees for walls, and a voice on the phone saying just 2 minutes, "You'll see me." Grandma's rocking chair. New Year's Eve is supposed to slam a door on whatever the last 12 months tried to do to you. Ours wasn't fireworks or a bar line. It was my friend Logan's parents' house. Suburbs, a finished basement, a kitchen island that turns into a bar whenever someone leaves a 12-pack on it and doesn't say anything. By midnight, the place was a warm blur of people who knew each other well enough to pass snacks without words. The countdown was off by 5 seconds because of a lagging TV stream, which meant we yelled "Happy New Year" early, then again for no reason except momentum. Half the crowd left by one, and the house did that thing big houses do when they start emptying. The temperature drops half a degree, the hall grows an echo, and you realize how loud laughter had been by the quiet it leaves. By 1:30, it was just the three of us who've been friends long enough to skip pleasantries. Logan, me, and Cody drifting into sleep on the couch with that open-mouth half-snore he denies later. We turned the music down to the volume where your brain has to decide to hear it. The fridge hummed. The heat breathed. We were about to call it a night. Then we heard it. A long, thin creak from below. Not a pop, not a pipe knock. The sound had a shape to it. Pause. Not loud, just specific, the way a sound gets when it's happened 1,000 times before. Fridge, Logan tried, because you offer each other harmless explanations first. The fridge doesn't rock, I said. The second creak came from the floor under us. Same rhythm, same length. If you've ever been in a quiet house and decided to listen, you understand how a single noise can rearrange a room. Logan went to the basement door and opened it. A breath of cooler air moved up the stairs, the kind of temperature shift that says the house has lungs. He flipped the light. Dead bulb. Of course. We could have shut the door and put a chair in front of it like kids. We didn't. Logan dug 2 flashlights from the junk drawer, one long and rattly, one small and heavy, and we went down together because bravery is easier in pairs. The light found the usual basement civilization: washer and dryer pair, plastic bins labeled with Sharpie, shelves of paint cans, an uncle-built bar with 3 stools, a treadmill that had become a wardrobe for winter coats, and in the near corner, half in shadow, the exact thing the sound had been translating for us: an old wooden rocking chair, high slatted back, runners darkened by decades of motion, a faded floral cushion that had once been cheerful. We watched it rock once, forward, back, stop, draft, Logan said. Temperature something. The furnace is over there, I said, pointing to the opposite wall where the old burner's pilot gave off a little orange eye. No vent near the chair, no obvious reason. Cody came 2 steps down and sat on the stair like a kid watching adults fix something dangerous. "If that thing moves again, I'm sleeping in the car," he said. We stood, waiting. Nothing. We turned to go. On the landing, the sound returned. We spun back with both beams on the rocker. It moved again, gentle, precise, like a metronome someone had set to slow comfort. No screaming. Just that quiet animal stillness fear gives you when your brain hasn't decided which way is out. 4 swings. Stop. The motion didn't feel theatrical. It felt like a reminder. I'm here. Upstairs, we locked the basement door. Not because a hollow door keeps anything out, but because hands need rituals. We put on a dumb sitcom laugh track to file the edges off our nerves. Around 3, I took the spare room. Logan headed to his. Cody draped himself over the couch and pretended sleep so he wouldn't have to choose a position on haunted rocker. Here's something they don't tell you. Once a steady rhythm gets in your head, your body tries to match it. Lying in a borrowed bed in the quiet of a big house, I kept hearing the rocker in my breath. I changed my breathing to prove I was driving. It felt like the room tried to pace me back. I woke once in that blue-black hour when the world is only an outline. For a long moment, the house was purely silent. Then, below and far, the creak came 4 times. E-ah, E-ah. Then nothing. Like a throat cleared and done. Morning brought coffee and rational voices. It always does. Logan's mom stopped by with a tin of leftover cookies and a hug that rearranged ribs. We told her the joke version first. Your basement is haunted. She didn't laugh. Was the chair angled toward the small window? We hadn't noticed. She walked downstairs and rotated the rocker 2 inches to face the short rectangular window high on the wall, the one that shows shoes and dogs in summer. My mother sat in this every night, she said, smoothing the top rail with her palm. When we moved it downstairs, she liked to watch the knees go by. She passed on New Year's Day, 10 years ago last night. It should have felt like a sentimental bow on a spooky story. It didn't. It felt like someone had set a heavy book on the counter and left. After she left, we tried the ordinary things smart people do to keep their brains from writing movies. We rocked the chair and timed it. A hard push took about 2 minutes to die, a 2-finger nudge just over a minute. It didn't restart on its own. We checked for vents. None. Drafts you could feel. None. Floor slope. Maybe. But our phone's level app said if there was, it was small. Let's just record it, Logan said. If it moves, we'll see. If it doesn't, we'll stop acting like we want it to. He set his phone on the basement bar, camera aimed at the corner, propped with a coaster to get the angle. We left the lights off and went upstairs. Leftovers. Naps. Early to bed like people who had been up too late pretending to be young. At 2:17 a.m., the camera caught the corner. The rocker moved. Forward. Back. Stopped. Minutes later, moved again. Same arc. Same speed. Not a trick of shadow. Not our imaginations misfiring. We scrubbed back and watched again, this time looking at the entire frame instead of the chair. That's when we saw what we'd missed. High near the water heater, a dust-yellowed device with a tiny red LED blinking. On, off, on, off. Slow, steady, and each blink lined up with the chair's forward motion. Blink, rock, blink, rock. What is that? I asked. We looked from the screen to the corner itself like the blink might still be happening. It wasn't. But the thing that owned the blink sat there exactly where it would. A wall-mounted carbon monoxide detector, old model, brand we recognized, expiration sticker faded to a fog. We pulled it off. Inside, a 9-volt that looked original. Dust in the seams. The test button did nothing. How would that move a chair? Cody asked, needing there to be a connection or for the mystery to stay pure. I couldn't tell which. I don't know that it does, I said. But CO is a liar. Headaches, weird dreams, chest tightness. It makes patterns feel predestined. If the furnace is breathing wrong, even a little, and this half-dead detector was blinking all night where we wouldn't hear it. I opened the basement window and the cold pressed in hard. We should stop ghost hunting and start ventilating. We aired the house, windows and doors open, heat off. Then we did what adults do when they don't totally trust their instincts. We bought gear, 2 brand new combo smoke CO detectors and a little handheld meter from the big store that sells everything. Back at the house, we mounted the new alarms upstairs and at the top of the basement stairs. The handheld meter booted with a beep that felt like permission. Readings, upstairs clean. Downstairs 1422 ppm by the bar and furnace. Occasional spikes near the rocker corner when the heat tried to cycle on before we killed it. Those aren't "you die tonight" numbers, but they are "your brain isn't working quite right, and the things you think you hear might not be innocent" numbers. Cody, who had woken with a tight chest and blurted, "I dreamed the house was breathing with me," blamed tequila. The meter blamed the furnace. We called the gas company. A tech named Javier arrived in a clean van with clean tools and the expression of a person who has explained the same truth to 100 anxious homeowners. He sniffed around the flue in the burners, took readings, watched the flame, put his thermometer probe into the exhaust like a doctor checking a fever. Not catastrophic, he said, but not good. Words like backdraft potential, lazy flue, incomplete combustion fell into the basement air. He wrote, "Service strongly recommended," and circled it until the paper looked tattooed. "You aired it out," he said. "But basements make pockets. Pockets make rhythms. A chair on a slightly uneven slab will accept any invitation to move." Cody, because he can't resist the joke, asked, "So, carbon monoxide ghosts are real?" Javier grinned. "I'm saying don't go looking for the dead when the house might be trying to tell you it can't breathe." We serviced the furnace. A week later, a guy with rolled towel forearms scraped and cleaned the burners, replaced a gasket, admired the old rocker, and told us his aunt had one like it. The new detectors chirped politely when we hit test and then sat with their green LEDs like tiny soldiers. The chair didn't rock by itself again. Not that month, not the next. If the story ended there, it would do fine on a list called Hauntings Debunked. Only, we still had two loose threads. The first was small. In March, when snow retreated to the fence lines and the yard turned the color of pennies, I slept over after a late movie. At 3 a.m., I woke with my heart beating like I'd run stairs. Maybe a dream, maybe nothing. I listened. From below came one creak, long, apologetic. Not the pattern, just a single shift, the sound wood makes when a weight readjusts. Then silence. Morning sun poured through the basement's short window like honey. Dust floated in it. The rocker sat angled toward the glass, maybe 2 degrees more than we'd left it. Draft, gravity, brain. I put my palm on the top rail the way Logan's mom had, and felt the old varnish nicked by 1,000 hands. I didn't tell anyone I thought it had moved. I didn't want to be voted off my own team. The second loose thread arrived as a text from Logan's mom that afternoon. A phone picture of a black and white print she'd found in a box. The living room a decade ago. The rocker upstairs then, by the front window. His grandmother in it, blanket over her knees, the cushions tiny flowers still bright by time's standards. The chair angled just so toward the glass, not for comfort but for view. Shoes passing, a dog's belly going by. The caption she typed below. She liked to watch the world leave and come back. I don't think she rocked the chair for us. I think our bodies were slightly oxygen light and our heads primed for patterns. I think an old detector blinked a rhythm that the chair, on a barely imperfect slab, was happy to match sometimes when air shifted through a pocket. I think a house, like a person, keeps habits after the reason for them is gone. But if I'm honest, I also think human beings are built to keep one mystery on a shelf where we can see it. We tell ourselves we want the world explained, and then we keep the good unsolved puzzle like a lucky coin. After the service and the detector swap and a dozen normal nights, I still catch Logan doing it. Standing by the basement door, palm resting flat, a heartbeat longer than needed, listening for one sound. If it comes, just that single polite we check the detectors like responsible people, nod to the room like we've heard it, and go to bed. A few practical changes stuck. We replace batteries on schedule instead of when something chirps at 3 a.m. We don't leave space heaters near anything that would miss us if we were gone. We know where the shutoff is on the furnace. The house got healthier because we met fear with maintenance instead of ritual. And the line I carried away, the one I didn't even know had been living in Logan's family until all this, became the spine of the story. His dad used to say it. It showed up in a green pocket notebook with measurements of fish and reminders like chimney and don't trust south step. In blocky caps, one page read, "Don't be afraid of ghosts. Be afraid of invitations." It fits more than basements. It's the difference between what knocks and what you open for. Fear the invitation to go down there at 2 in the morning just to make sure. Fear the impulse to turn a mystery into a bigger one when a battery might be the answer. Fear the way a rhythm can ask your body to say yes without you noticing. So here's the version I tell now, shorter than the long night we lived, true enough to keep me honest. After a party dwindled to 3, we heard a rocking chair keep time in a basement corner. We stared at wood moving and wanted it to mean the person who used to sit there. A camera saw the same motion, and a dying red blink from an old CO detector pulsing in time. A meter showed air that could trick a brain. A text said, "Service it," and we did, and the chair stopped. Mostly. Once, only once, months later, it gave us one long creak and faced the window like it had always preferred. We let that one go unsolved, not because we need the magic, but because houses, like people, are allowed a single habit they can't explain. Next New Year's Eve, we'll probably be in the same kitchen. Music too loud until it isn't. Someone will say, "Happy New Year" too loudly. Someone will laugh because the year owes us. After midnight, the house will settle and Logan will tilt his head toward the stairs with a grin he can't help. We'll listen. If the basement says nothing, we'll sleep easy. If it gives us a small, respectful eye, we'll check the green lights on the detectors, top off the kettle for morning coffee, and choose to treat it like what it likely is. Wood remembering hands, air finishing a circuit, a chair holding a view for a pair of eyes that like to watch the world leave and come back. That's not a monster story. It's better. It's a house story. It's the kind of horror that asks you to maintain, to listen, and to keep one little unknown polished, not to worship, but to remind you that most things that knock on glass at night aren't visitors. They're invitations, and the only power you have is whether you open the door.